Hi everyone, my name is Ben Still and I teach saxophone at UNC Charlotte, and this is my performance of the 9-10 North Carolina All-State Saxophone Solo, which is F major from the Voxman Selected Studies for Saxophone book. A couple of things that I would point out that need to be practiced between now and the audition would be, one, the rhythm. Make sure that you're being really solid with your counting. There's a lot of held notes that are tied over to another measure or just a beat within a measure that are easy to kind of play incorrectly. So I'm looking at, for example, measure 3 or measure 7. Oftentimes we don't hold those notes out long enough, or we maybe hold them out too long. And so just make sure you're subdividing down to the 8th note level, or maybe even 16th notes. You can of course do that in your head, but also you can use a metronome to help you with that. The second thing that I would maybe focus on is, after you figured out the notes and the rhythms, you can of course start looking at some of these ornamentations, and they look a little strange. These are what we would call turns. And the turns that you see in measures 5 and 6, they show up elsewhere. Measure 14, we have a couple in measure 33 and 34, etc., etc. And you'll notice in measures 5 and 6 that they have a little tiny number 1 or number 2 above them. And then that references you down to the bottom of the page. Number 1, which shows a rhythm, and then number 2, which shows a slightly different rhythm, and that fit into those two measures. And those are the examples that we're going to be using moving forward. So if you look at measure 5, you'll notice that the half note is the same note in terms of pitch as the dotted 8th note. And so for all of the measures that have that kind of turn in it, where the half note matches the dotted 8th note that then follows on beat 3, you're going to use the same rhythm for number 1. And then of course for number 2, you'll notice that the half note is different than the note that's on beat 3, the dotted 8th note. And so for that, for any measure that has that kind of turn in it, you're going to use the rhythm seen in number 2. So that first rhythm is going to sound something like this. So I just played number 1 rhythm, so I had a dotted quarter note with a triplet, or a 16-note triplet, excuse me. And then number 2 would sound like this. This is measure 6. So you'll notice that number 2 has one extra note in it, which is why it has those 30-second notes listed there as a rhythm. So just be aware that you're going to use slightly different rhythms based on that pattern. The other thing you'll notice about measure 6 in particular is that there's also accidentals on top and below the turn symbol. And so what those accidentals mean is a turn functions very similarly to a trill. When we trill up to the next note within the key signature unless otherwise noted, and this turn functions the same way. So I'm on an A natural there in measure 6. The half note is an A natural. And of course, the next note above it in the key signature is a B flat. But the composer here has put a natural above that, which means instead of turning up from an A to a B flat, we're gonna ascend from an A to a B natural. And then of course, there's a sharp below it, which means naturally I would go from A down to a G, but because there's a sharp, I need to sharp that note. So I'm going to go down from an A to a G sharp. So be aware of that in your turns. Watch out for some of those accidentals. There are also in measure 33, you need to play an F sharp. And it's not marked this way, but you do need to play an F sharp in measure 41. It's the same exact turn that you see in measure 33. So be aware of that. The last thing that I would say for this etude is this is a chance for you to show off your overall musicality, your musicianship, your tone on the saxophone. If you're starting to explore some vibrato, then this is a great place to implement it. You would certainly try to do this on maybe some of the longer notes, like a half note, maybe even a quarter note. But this is a really good chance to show off a nice, beautiful sound on your saxophone. So make sure you're using really good air support and that you're blowing all the way through some of these phrases and making sure that they sound really smooth and connected unless otherwise noted. I hope these tips are helpful, and of course you can reach me at bestill@uncc.edu. Happy practicing!